Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my privilege to introduce the Right Honourable Adrienne Clarkson, former Governor-General of Canada. Author, broadcaster, publisher, distinguished public servant, Madame Clarkson's impressive public service, as well as her moving personal story from penniless refugee to achieving the highest office of her adopted country as head of state, is a source of inspiration for us all, especially in this time of the refugee crisis. She is here with her husband, Sir Dr. John Ralston Saul, author, philosopher, and president of PEN International, who recently issued a statement on the refugee crisis to Martin Schulz. And I'd like to quote from that: "The biggest displacement of people since 1945 is a test of European and democratic values." In 2005, Madame Clarkson co-founded the Institute for Canada Citizenship to help new citizens in Canada integrate into Canadian life. In this unfolding migration crisis, Greece and Europe can take a leaf out of your book, Madame Clarkson, because indeed there is room for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Right Honourable Adrienne Clarkson.
Your Highness, distinguished guests, and members of the Athens Democracy Forum. As we open this conference on democracy in its birthplace of Athens, the images of people perilously afloat in overcrowded boats, thronging in railway stations, huddled in tents, challenges our humanity in a stark and urgent way. Last week's picture of Alan Kurdi, aged 3, dead, face down on the beach, aroused our sense of shame and horror. It challenged our decency to the core. It happened that his family were trying to get to Canada, and this shocked all Canadians, causing an outpouring of grief and recrimination that has had a major effect on our current federal election campaign. I tweeted, "I was 3 when we came to Canada as refugees in 1942, the same age as that toddler. Have we no pity?" I received 1,500 retweets and favorites, reflecting the traditional values of Canadians towards refugees, accepting and willing to help. We have always known how to help. I was the 26th Governor-General of Canada for 6 years, from 1999 to 2005. A Governor-General, as those from Commonwealth countries know, is an apolitical appointment representing the ultimate authority of the state and therefore the de facto head of state, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, signing all laws into being, assuring that Canada always has a government, naming that government, consulting with the Prime Minister on regular basis, but always off the record, sending out ambassadors to represent Canada, and receiving letters of credence from foreign ones. As the functions of head of state and head of government are split, the Governor-General is able to voice Canadian concerns from a position above politics. These conversations with Canadians involve traveling 200,000 kilometers a year in our country, which has the second largest land mass after Russia. My major themes were the North and our Aboriginal people. It is the duty of the Governor-General to undertake state visits to many countries, and it was a fascinating and worthwhile experience. But I began my life in Canada as a 3-year-old refugee after the fall of Hong Kong to the Japanese in 1942 in the Second World War. What would little Alan Kurdi, dead on that beach, have done if he had grown up in Canada as I did? What if he had been taken into a small city of 90,000 people, as I was, where the Jewish drugstore owner gave him free cough drops together with his prescription, and had his own son walk home with him 8 blocks through the snow? Our temporary housing was in a French-Canadian Catholic neighborhood, and 3 women helped my mother, who had come from a household filled with servants, learn how to cook pork and beans and Irish stew. She later went on to one of the few Chinese restaurants to learn how to cook Cantonese food. My family, my mother, my father, and brother, aged 7, and I were given 8 hours to prepare to leave under the aegis of the Red Cross to come to North America. We were allowed 1 suitcase each, which included my brother's pillow, without which he could not sleep. Out of that experience, I gained the courage to continue, the need to survive, and the necessity to never look back, even as my grandmother waved goodbye. We never saw her again. Like all refugees, I learned the nature of loss and the necessity for reinvention. By surviving, you also gain the chance to begin, to be aware, to seek, and to welcome the new. I went to public school, public high school, and public university. Canada's education system is part of its success as a nation, and it is egalitarian and free for all. Public school teachers encouraged me to read Wuthering Heights when I was only 12 because I was ready for it. My high school English teacher entered me in citywide public speaking contests run by the Rotary Club because he saw a future for me as an orator. And he persuaded my parents not to send me to McGill University, but to Trinity College, University of Toronto, where he had gone. The decision, like getting on the Red Cross boat, changed my life. My brother did go to McGill and became a surgeon. The little Poy family survived and thrived, and eventually even had a cottage in the wilderness by a lake. Pericles said, "We throw open our city to the world, and never by alien acts exclude foreigners from any opportunity of learning or observing. If we look to the laws, they afford equal justice to all. If to social standing, advancement in public life falls to reputation for capacity, class considerations not being allowed to interfere with merit. Nor again does poverty bar the way. If a man is able to serve the state, he is not hindered by the obscurity of his condition." These are still the democratic ideals by which we live, even though, as we well know, the citizen in Athens could not be female, not from outside Athens, and certainly not a slave. But those who were full-fledged political equals and were ready to meet dangers depending on the courage which springs from our manner of life rather than the compulsion of law. For all its flaws, Athenian democracy still has much to say to us, and for that reason, we cling to its components as if to particularly well-balanced pieces of an ongoing shipwreck. In Canada, 25% of people do volunteer activity and say they do it because it makes them feel good about themselves, whether it's going to retirement homes and helping older people fill out their income tax or delivering meals to people confined to their homes. In February, which is declared Heart Month because of Valentine's Day, 100,000 Canadians go door to door in the middle of our winter to canvass for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. This year, they raised $12 million in that 1 month. In most high schools, kids have to put in a minimum number of volunteer hours a week in order to graduate. We weren't always this way, although we did tend to help each other because of our dreadful climate. But we are a country of complexity built on 3 pillars: Aboriginal, French, and English. Our country is a complex one, not at all like the gigantic, powerful empire to our south of the 49th parallel. We share the roots of a common language, but our complexity of a country built on those 3 pillars and buttressed by bilingualism in 2 world languages is not the complexity of the American non-conforming revolutionary Enlightenment burdened by what is now being called the original sin of slavery. Our relations with our Aboriginal people were excellent for the first 300 years of our history. They showed us the way into the heart of the continent, and we enriched ourselves through the fur trade. It was only in the mid-19th century when the Protestant Orange Order turned things sour. And it is wise to remember that until 1960, as Mavis Gallant, one of our greatest writers, wrote, there was flowering in us the dark bloom of the old country, the mistrust of pity, the contempt for weakness, the fear of the open heart. But by 1968, we no longer had the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1923, which had been enacted to prevent Chinese immigrating legally to Canada to avoid the Yellow Peril. I then was not only a refugee, but also illegal at the time. Nobody seemed to notice. In the late 60s, public opinion in Canada was building steadily against the American war in Vietnam. The government under Pierre Elliott Trudeau decided that draft resistors should be given opportunity to emigrate to Canada, that they were resisting this particular war and weren't simply opposed to any military action. Therefore, all draft resistors and deserters were given legal status as landed immigrants. The New York Times trumpeted Canada to admit any U.S. deserter. Over a period of several years, Canada received 50,000 Americans of draft age, the largest injection since the United Empire Loyalists left the United States after the American Revolution. We were so enriched by these young men, who later became members of Parliament, mayors, performers, professors, broadcasters. Very few ever returned to the United States after amnesty was declared. In 1973, after the fall of Salvador Allende and the seizure of power by General Pinochet, an event which plunged many of us into the deepest of gloom, we took 30,000 Chileans, sending military planes for them. We took more Chileans proportionately than any other country except France. In 1972, Canada accepted 10,000 Ismaili refugees, victims of persecution and expulsion from East Africa. At the time, there were less than 1,000 Muslims in all of Canada, and perhaps only a handful of the branch known as Ismailis. They have become enormously successful in business and the professions, and particularly the helping ones, like medicine, as their belief and practices emphasize helping others, not only in their own community, but in any larger community in which they may find themselves. The mayor of our oil capital, Calgary, Naheed Nenshi, is at 43, was elected at 38, the first Muslim mayor of a large North American city, and he was re-elected 2 years ago with 74% of the votes. He worked in a bingo hall running coffee from the time he was 11, held 3 part-time jobs in high school, and then went to Harvard Business School. In 1979, public outcry in Canada was huge, supporting the plight of the Vietnamese boat people. Within a year, we took 60,000 because the government of Prime Minister Joe Clark listened to the public outcry. Our ambassador in Thailand, Fred Bild, whose father was killed at Auschwitz and who was hidden for 3 years as a child on a Belgian farm during the Nazi occupation, was the point person who coordinated sending immigration officers out from Canada who went directly to the refugee camps to interview and clear refugees so that they could get on the planes rented by the Canadian government. Our civil servants in the Department of Immigration and Citizenship are still the same kind of people and are still capable of that kind of work. 2 full plane loads a month arrived to bring the Vietnamese boat people to Edmonton and Montreal. Groups of Canadians, dubbed Operation Lifeline, organized to adopt families when they arrived, finding them apartments, getting clothes. They arrived in Edmonton in midwinter, minus 20 degrees, taking their children to register at school, finding jobs for the parents, dishes for the apartment. And it was a wonderful time for many Canadians as we proudly watched our family doing well. By now, the children have become journalists, filmmakers, engineers, architects. Canada did not stay the same as a result of all these people coming, but it did not become less. They didn't take anything away from us. Canada became more, and we need more. From a selfish point of view, like every other developed country, we will need immigration in order not to stagnate as a nation and to pay for all the social benefits that we have earned as a nation. Our growth in population after 2030 will depend on immigration. Canada tries to bring 1% of its population of 35 million people as immigrants every year, and we don't quite reach that goal, but we do receive about 200,000 a year, and after an average of 5 to 6 years, they become citizens if they choose to. And 80% of our landed immigrants do choose to become Canadian. We gain an average of about 180,000 new citizens every year. On leaving Ottawa, my husband John Ralston Saul and I founded the Institute for Canadian Citizenship to help new citizens from the day they swear their oath to Canada to integrate more quickly into the mainstream of Canadian life. We start welcoming them sometimes with special ceremonies run by volunteers across the country in cities large and small. The federal government does a total of 2,900 ceremonies every year. Our institute gives free passes to all new citizens and their families of up to 4 children to all museums and other cultural organizations for 1 year. It's called the Cultural Access Pass. With this pass, they can also get half price on the lowest price on train travel anywhere in the country for 1 year, and an entrance to all national and provincial wilderness parks, like Banff or Jasper. We have programs to encourage them to vote. There's one up right now as we're in the middle of a campaign so that they can go into a voting booth and not feel intimidated. We have a program to help them participate in sports, to understand hockey. In fact, there is now a broadcast in Punjabi of our national game. At our special ceremonies, we hear new citizens talk with established Canadians about their hopes and dreams. And we ask them what they don't like about Canada, and the only thing ever is the weather. Now we are faced with a situation where all Canadians want to help again. Yesterday, the former Chief of Defense Staff when I was Governor General and who commanded us when we were in Afghanistan, General Rick Hillier, called for us to accept 50,000 refugees before Christmas and laid out a plan as to how the planes would leave, where they would come. I'm with him. That's the minimum. And I know our civil servants are up to it. I know they could come out, whether it's to Kos or to Lesbos or to Calais, and help. I know they would know how to do it, and they would know how to do it right. I belong to an Anglican parish which has been steadily but slowly, because of a lot of red tape which has grown up in the last few years, to support first a Burmese family, and before that an Iraqi family. We share that responsibility with a synagogue which is on the same street as the church. We are heeding the call to love the stranger as we were once the strangers. And we will be able, as we have in the past, to screen them and not be overcome with fear. I believe that we have the confidence that our country can help the other, that helping the other is the only way that we can make our own narrative, which is how Hannah Arendt says is the only way we can act, because you can only act vis-a-vis another in relation to others. We have to acknowledge that no one is too poor to give, nor too rich to receive. We have to have the confidence in our own structures and beliefs to do what is right, what is just, what is for the public good. We have to announce the hundreds of thousands we will take in the name of our values, our democratic beliefs, our sharing of the Athenian ideals. By living those ideals, we will help others to want to live up to those ideals. We must make known by our actions that we are all human beings, and no human being is more human than any other. It is in our power, in the power of the countries we all come from, to give those who are fleeing by boat, by truck, by foot, with their children, a destination from which they can create new life for themselves and contribute what they will become to our future. They are coming to us. They are part of us, part of what we all share at this point on the earth. As the Quran tells us, we are all created by a single creator. Therefore, we are all part of an original project. They want to come home. And as the poet said, home is the place where, when you have to go there, they've got to take you in. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clarkson, for your inspiring words. Athenian democracy can be a North Star for the world, but we certainly need navigators like you.